Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kerry and today I will be bringing you the mid-year freakout tag. So a lot of people that I subscribe to have been doing this tag. It looks like a lot of fun. So the first question is, what is your best book of 2018 so far? So if you watched my wrap-up video, this won't surprise you, but my best book of 2018 so far is Shatila Stories. This is a collection of short stories which have been woven together to make sort of more or less one narrative. They were written by refugees in the Shatila camp in Lebanon. So all of the authors are Syrian or Palestinian refugees. The book was commissioned by Pereine Press, who are the publishers, and the editors went out and ran a writing workshop with the refugees in the camp, and then they all submitted their stories and their editors managed to weave them together, as I say, to make one narrative. It's an absolutely beautiful, breathtaking book, just giving a bit of an idea of what life is like in one of these camps. The characters are just so memorable, and the stories really stayed with me, and it was beautiful and heartbreaking all at the same time. So really highly recommend this, of course. I'll put the link down to the publisher's website. You can buy it direct from them. They're an independent publisher, so it's really good to buy it direct from them if you can, and 50p of every copy sold goes to a charity working with the refugees, so really highly recommend that. That's Shatila Stories. Question 2 is, what is the best sequel you've read this year? And for me, the best sequel I've read so far this year was Home by Marilynne Robinson. This is the follow-up to Gilead. I got this from the library, so I don't actually have a physical copy at the moment. I will be buying the whole series at some point. So the first book, Gilead, is about the Reverend Ames, who's supporting his friend, the Reverend Bolton, who is approaching the end of his life, and Reverend Bolton's son, Jack, comes back, and this really disrupts Reverend Ames's life. I can't remember their first names, it's really bothering me. So the second book, Home, which I read this year, is not so much a sequel as the same story told from another perspective. So the events, it's the same events but told from the perspective of Glory, who is Reverend Bolton's daughter, Jack Bolton's sister, and she's also recently moved home to look after her aging father, and I just really love this book. I'd enjoyed Gilead when I read it last year, enjoyed it an awful lot, but I enjoyed Home even more because it just shed such a different perspective on the story, and it was great revisiting those characters and seeing the story from another angle. And actually I enjoyed Home so much that it's made me appreciate Gilead even more, so I want to reread both of those. I currently have the third book, which is called Lila. I've got that out from the library, so I don't know if that's a follow-on or if it's again the same story told from a third perspective, but I'll let you know when I've read that. So question 3 is, what are some new releases that you haven't read yet? These are both books that I'm intending to read in July, I just haven't quite got round to them yet. So the first of these is Children of Blood and Bone, which is really popular on BookTube, so I hope to read that in July. I'm currently doing Tone Topple, so I will try and read that for that. So that's one of them. The other book that I also mentioned in my June wrap-up and July TBR that I want to read this month is Undivided by Vicky Beeching, which was bought for me on the Big Green Books by a Stranger Book Day. She's a really inspiring woman. I follow her on Twitter as well, and so I'm really excited to read this book, and I'll let you know what I think of it when I've read it. Question 4 is, what is your most anticipated release for the rest of the year? Now, I was going to say Notes on a Nervous Planet by Matt Haig, but that's already come out. That's come out this last week. So it is in July it's come out, which does make it still the second half of the year. But I kind of felt that I couldn't do that anymore. So just to say about that, Matt Haig is a brilliant author. He also wrote a book called Reasons to Stay Alive, which was about his experience of anxiety and depression. So Notes on a Nervous Planet is his follow-up to Reasons to Stay Alive. Really excited to read it. I haven't got a copy of it yet, but we'll be getting it soon. so I'm really excited for that one. As I say, that has actually now come out, so I've had to pick a different one for my most anticipated release for the rest of the year. And I'm not really ever sure about what's coming out, but I did see Jess Reed's Books did a great review on a book called A Big Ship at the Edge of the Universe. I hope I've got that title right. And she really sold it, and so I'm really looking forward to reading that when it comes out. I think it's out later in the month of July in the UK, but I'm not entirely sure. But I will certainly be picking that up based on her recommendation, and I'll link her review video below. Question 5 is, what is your biggest disappointment of the year so far? And this isn't my least favourite book that I've read, but it's the one that I felt most let down by, and it's a book called The Bookaneers by Matthew Powell. And I must confess I did pick it up because of the title, not even the cover, just the title really intrigued me. It's a book about book pirates, so pirates who steal books. I mean, to me that was just sounded really exciting, and it was such a letdown. It's set in just around the time that copyright laws were starting to come in, which was I think in the late 19th century, but I'm not entirely sure. And so this guy owns a bookshop in London, and he's approached by one of the famous Bookaneers to help him steal an as yet unpublished Robert Louis Stevenson manuscript, which means they have to go to the Caribbean, where Robert Louis Stevenson is currently living, to try and steal this manuscript. And as I say, it was just very disappointing. Question 6 is, what is your biggest surprise of the year so far? So this video I'm mainly focusing on books that I've read for the first time, but I did want to give an honourable mention here to a reread that I read this year, which was Mansfield Park by Jane Austen. This was a surprise to me because I hadn't enjoyed it when I first read it. So I first read it about 10 years ago, and I didn't really like it. It was, at the time, was my least favourite of all her books. But rereading it this year, a little bit older, a little bit wiser, and I felt like I understood Fanny Price a lot better this time around and found her less irritating, and actually really quite likeable as a character, and I could see a lot more similarities to myself and her. And I'm so glad I decided to reread all of Jane Austen's novels this year, because, as I say, this one went right up in my estimation. I would say the first time I read it, although I wasn't rating books then, it would have been about on a 3-star. This reread has gone up to 5 stars, so really enjoyed that one. And then the other book that I'm picking for this topic, which wasn't a reread, is Death in the Seaside by Alison Moore. This was surprising for an entirely different reason, because I was expecting a little cosy seaside murder mystery story, but it was very different to that. It was, if you saw my wrap up, you'll have heard me talk about this. It was much more suspenseful, really intriguing. You were never quite sure what was going on, what was real, what was fiction. It's about a girl called Bonnie who is pretty much failing at everything she tries. She moves into a new flat, and the landlady is called Sylvia, and she's not quite what she seems, and it's just very, very interesting story. And it was our Ninja Book Club pick for last month, and I'm really glad that I came across it, because it's not a book that I would have come across on my own, so I was really glad that it was picked for our book club. Question 7 is, who is your new favourite author? So this is either someone who is new to you or someone who is a debut author. So I picked someone who is new to me, and that is Becky Chambers. I was bought The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet for Christmas by Secret Santa at work, which was really good. I read it in February and I absolutely loved it. Was so excited when I finished it to realise it was the first in a series, and then a little while later when I was at the library I saw they had A Closed and Common Orbit, which is the second book in the series, and I enjoyed that so much that I went out and bought myself a copy. So I have both of them now, and I also have the third book, Record of a Spaceborne Few. I've got that on pre-order because that's not out until the beginning of next year, but I can't wait for that to come out. I'm so excited. So yeah, so Becky Chambers, my new favourite author. so far this year. Question 8 is, who is your newest fictional crush? Well, I couldn't think of a book character to use for this one. I did rack my brains, but no one came to mind. So I've gone for a character from a TV show that I've been really enjoying this year. I binge watched the whole series on Netflix in the space of about a week because I loved it so much. So the series is The Good Place, and I am a little bit in love with Chidi. He is just adorable as far as I'm concerned. Really, really likeable character. So yeah, so he's probably my newest fictional crush, although he's not from a book, he is from a TV series, but I don't think that matters really. Question 9 is, who is your newest favourite character? And I had to think a little bit about this one too, but eventually I settled on Ayana Weir from Sometimes a River Song, which was a book I received in last year's Ninja Book Box Summer Reading collection. This is set in Arkansas in the 1930s among a riverboat community. Ayana is the central character, and she just has such an interesting voice. She is treated as a bit of a black sheep of the family. She's not been allowed to go to school or learn to read, and she's abused by her father essentially, so there is a trigger warning for abuse in that. And yeah, so she has an ally in her brother, but through a series of events she's left very isolated. She is trying to teach herself to read so that she can escape and find a new life for herself. And it's a really powerful story. It's only a short little book, but it was just beautiful, and my copy is signed, and I really love this. I read this earlier this year. Really, really highly recommend this book. Question 10 is a book that made you cry, and there have been quite a few books that have made me quite emotional, but the one that sprang to mind was The White City by Roma Tearne, and this one came to mind because I was reading it in my lunch break at work and trying very hard not to cry in public as I was coming to the end, and I was actually had to take a slightly longer lunch break because I just really needed to get to the end of the book. So this was again a Ninja Book Club pick, and it was just absolutely beautiful. It's set in a future London where the whole city has been frozen solid for years, and as it's starting to thaw, the main character, who is called Hera, is sort of starting to think about what happened as the first snow started to fall and as the city froze, and the situation that she found herself in at that time, and she's sort of reflecting on the years of the snow, and sort of essentially trying to figure out what's happened. And the ending was just, I kind of expected what was coming, but I also really didn't, and it just left me really emotional, as I said, and trying not to burst into tears in the staff room at work. So really good book, that one. Question 11 is name a book that made you happy. The book I'm picking for this is called The Sewing Machine by Natalie Fergie. I do have a copy of this, but I've lent it to my parents because I loved it so much that I wanted them to read it too. This again was a Ninja Book Club pick. That might be a bit of a theme because a lot of the books that I pick up come from that book club, and this is one of my favourite books of the year so far. When we were talking about it in our discussion, I remember describing it as being a hug of a book because it was just such a comforting read. It just did feel like someone was giving me a big hug while I was reading it. It's the story of two families who are connected by a sewing machine. So one is the family of a woman who worked in the Singer sewing machine factory in Scotland, and she was involved in making this particular sewing machine, and the other family are the family that bought the sewing machine, and it covers 4 generations of these two families and how their stories are interlinked. Beautifully written. It's mainly set in Edinburgh as well, which is one of my favourite cities, so really enjoyed that book. It definitely made me happy. Question 12 is, what is your favourite book to movie adaptation of the year? I have seen a lot of movies, but not many that were adapted from books. In fact, I couldn't think of any that I've seen this year that were adapted from books, so I've had to use my imagination a little bit with this one. One of my favourite movies that I've seen this year was Mary Magdalene, which is essentially based on the Bible, so, you know, and that's a book, so I figure that works. I saw this at Easter and oh my goodness, it's just such a beautiful film, and I did cry a lot at the end. A bit of background is that I have recently finished a master's and in theology and social justice, and I wrote my dissertation on feminist theology, and part of that was looking at female characters in the Bible and how they have been received over the centuries. So I did write a subchapter about Mary Magdalene. She's one of my favourite biblical characters, and she's been done such a disservice by the church over the years, and so for me this film was just a beautiful way of restoring her character, and I wish more people had seen it because I don't think it was in cinemas for very long. So that's definitely one that I would say check out. Question 13 is, what is your favourite video you've made so far this year? Well, I'm fairly new to BookTube, so I haven't made that many yet. I have made one that I really enjoyed making. It's a concept that I really enjoyed. I haven't actually posted it yet though. So that's my TBR tackling video, which will be going up this week, so keep an eye out for that one, and let me know what you think, because it's an idea I'm really pleased with, so you'll have to stay in suspense a few more days until I post that video. Question 14 is, what is the most beautiful book cover you've purchased or received this year? And this was an easy one. I treated myself to the 80th anniversary edition of Rebecca, which is my favourite ever book. It's got gold embossing on it, it's got a textured cover as well. It's designed to look like Rebecca's wedding dress, and the inside cover as well also has, I don't know if you can see that very clearly, the R on it, which as soon as I saw this was being released, I knew I would be buying it eventually. As I say, Rebecca is my favourite ever book by Daphne du Maurier, and I just really wanted this beautiful copy, and because my previous copy was just a cheap one I got in a charity shop, I'm so glad I saw this, and yeah, just as I say, it was a big treat for myself to get this, but it's just gorgeous and I love it. And finally, question 15. What are some books that you would like to read this year? Well, I have quite a lot of books on my TBR, so I've just picked a select few to tell you about. The first one I've got here is The Tethered Mage by Melissa Caruso. The follow-up to this, The Defiant Heir, has recently come out. I first heard of Melissa Caruso on Twitter when she did an epic thread about sword fighting in ball gowns, and then I heard that she had a book out and I was like, I need to get it, and then it was really cheap on Amazon, so I got it. So I'm really keen to read this, and hopefully I'll enjoy it and buy the follow-up, The Defiant Heir. So that's The Tethered Mage by Melissa Caruso. Second book I've got for you here is The Rest of Us Just Live Here by Patrick Ness. In my wrap-up you may have seen that I've just read A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness, and I got this out from the library at the same time actually. I'm really excited to read it. I've heard quite a lot of good things about it on BookTube, and I really enjoyed his writing in A Monster Calls, so quite excited to read that one. And finally, I've got Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, which is the first book in the Farseer trilogy, and that's the first trilogy of the Realm of the Elderlings saga. I'm borrowing this from a friend because there was a really long wait list for it on the library, so she's actually lent me all three of the Farseer trilogy, and I've been meaning to read them for ages and have not quite got around to them yet, so this is high on my list as well. So that's all for that video. Thank you for watching. Please let me know if you've read and enjoyed any of these books, or other books that you think I should be getting to, other books that you think I might like that are coming out this year. And please follow me on social media, all those links will be down below. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye!